Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Nigerian judges dismiss all claims of Peter Obi, major candidate in February's elections, in his bid to overturn President Bola Tinubu's victory. Despite the controversy surrounding his win, Wednesday also sees him mark 100 days in office. Also, the first ever Africa Climate Change Conference wraps up with a declaration from African leaders calling for new global taxes to help fund the continent's adaptation to the ravages of the climate emergency. And we head to Benin, where students are preparing for the mid-September back-to-school season, but for some, class never ended as they spent the summer brushing up on their digital entrepreneurial skills at special camps. But first, a Nigerian court has dismissed a major opposition petition to overturn President Bola Tinubu's victory in February's election. Now, Peter Obi had accused Tinubu's camp of fraud and claimed that his rival wasn't eligible to run in the first place. The 2023 election was one of the most contested the country's ever seen, and similar claims against Tinubu were also brought by the PDP party of the runner-up in the polls, Atiku Abubakar. Now, our Sam Olukoya joins us now with more. Sam, so tell us more about what the judges had to say on Wednesday about the claims against Tinubu and how significant were their findings?
Well, this is quite a contentious issue. I mean, we've seen a judgment that has dragged on for about 12 hours non-stop. And I mean, there's a lot at stake, apparently. One of the key issues which Nigerians had looked forward to was claims that President Tinubu forfeited about $500,000 to a court in the US, and this was said to be proceeds from drugs. Nigerians were anxiously awaiting what the court will say on this, because if that were true, then he could be disqualified based on a criminal conviction. But significantly, the court here ruled that it was just a forfeiture, not that he was criminally convicted. So he was able to escape through that. That could have really damaged his image if he was said to have been convicted in the US. But there were other grounds by the three parties that went to court. They made allegations of widespread rigging. They said he was not even qualified to run for the election in the first place because the vice presidential candidate had double nomination, and to that extent, the vice presidential candidate stands disqualified, and the president, by extension, also stands disqualified. But the court ruled against this also, that the vice presidential candidate, even though he had double nomination, but he was able to drop one of the nomination to concentrate on just the presidential election. So virtually all the issues raised were dropped, and significantly, I think it will enable President Tinubu to be able to face what he's elected to do. It has been quite a distraction. Many people were boasting that there will be a re-election because he's likely to lose the case, but now we have seen him won the case. But then the case will go further to the Supreme Court, and we still don't know. So it's not yet full that he has won this, but at least he has won one round of it. But this has not ended the acrimony. I think it will rather widen the acrimony between the president on the one hand and those who have gone to court. We've not seen anything like this in the past. We just have maybe one candidate challenging the victory, but here we have three candidates claiming victory in addition to the president. Then we're talking of four people claiming victory. And for the opposition, the other three candidates, I mean, they are not in any way ready to concede defeat, even if at the Supreme Court level, the court also declares that President Tinubu was validly elected. I don't see this actually bringing everybody together.
Thank you so much. Sam Olukoya there speaking to us from Lagos. Now, as Sam said, this does mean that Tinubu will continue to do his job. And Wednesday marked the 100th day of office of the Nigerian president. With the controversy surrounding his appointment, mounting frustration in Nigeria over the rising cost of living and falling faith in security and regional instability also threatening to undermine the country's fortunes, the stakes have been high for Tinubu during this first period. Clarice Fortune talks us through.
100 days into his rule, and Nigerian President Bola Tinubu has become the new strongman of African diplomacy. After he also became head of regional bloc ECOWAS in July, he emphasized his intention to clamp down on a wave of West African coups and spearheaded a hardline approach with the junta that took over neighboring Niger in a coup on July 26.
It is our duty to exhaust all avenues of engagement to ensure a swift return to constitutional governance in Niger.
He took office after a contested election and has a lot to prove. Security is a huge challenge in Nigeria, with emergency ranging from the Boko Haram Islamist insurgency to a rush of kidnappings and attacks by armed gangs called bandits. The economy is also under pressure. Tinubu was quick to launch a series of reforms aimed at revitalizing the country's finances, the most unpopular being the ending of fuel subsidies.
Everything is getting expensive, such as transport. We are not making any profit.
We cannot say the government is not trying, but things are tight. Everything has gone up. We beg them to attend to the needs of the country so that everything will be fine for us. Because since they took office, everything has been difficult, and it's not like it used to be. Everything has changed. They should have mercy on the poor, have mercy on the country by fixing it.
Nigeria is Africa's richest country, but is facing a severe economic crisis, aggravated by the coronavirus pandemic and the Russian offensive in Ukraine. The currency is weak, foreign debt huge, and unemployment rampant. But President Bola Tinubu remains determined to boost its international clout. He's soon to attend a G20 summit in India, hoping to make Nigeria one of its members.
Now, the first ever Africa Climate Summit wrapped up in Nairobi on Wednesday, with dozens of leaders signing a declaration that calls for global taxes to help fund climate change action on the continent. Despite suffering from some of the worst impacts of climate change, Africa only receives about 12% of the nearly $300 billion in annual financing it needs. Olivia Bizot with more from Nairobi.
One of the main objectives of the Nairobi Declaration on Climate Change is to put forward African solutions. These include scaling up renewable energy and protecting the continent's key resources. But for these solutions to become reality, funding is needed. Now, Kenyan President William Ruto has said that actors at this summit have promised to invest $23 billion on green projects across the continent. Now, this funding is crucial for real change to happen, as this Zambian activist, Matthews Kalabo, explained.
The issue is, do we have capacity, do we have resources as African countries to combat climate change? The answer is no. Why? Because, we're still developing nations. And yet developing nations, of course, they're not honoring their pledges. Every year whenever they meet, just making pledges and so forth, which they're not even fulfilling, which is not a good thing. So I think my encouragement to the world developed nations, I think it's better they honor their pledges so that they can help Africa to combat some of climate impact.
This summit was the first time the African Union summoned its leaders for a conversation fully devoted to climate change. And that's a conversation that needs to be had, because despite contributing to just 4% of global greenhouse gas emissions, Africa is the worst hit by the devastating effects of climate change. Now, the head of the African Union Commission has said that this summit will take place every 2 years from now on. But African leaders are going to meet before then at COP28 in November, where they want to speak with the same united and strong voice that they used during this summit.
Olivia Bizet there for us in Nairobi. Now, in Benin, students in Cotonou are preparing for the mid-September back-to-school season, but for some, class never ended. The summer was spent brushing up on their business know-how and special classes to put on to boost digital entrepreneurship. Our team popped in.
At just 13, Ségolène already has a clear vision of her future. She is one of about 20 students learning digital entrepreneurship at the Seme-1 campus in Benin's capital, Cotonou. The courses are government-funded and are held at facilities with state-of-the-art technology.
I place my finger flat here and it measures my blood pressure. The results will appear on the small dial. I enjoy playing around with different materials to create something new. This robot is programmed to take various vital readings from patients when they go to the hospital.
They're ahead of their peers. They need to be able to say, okay, I have a crazy idea, but here I have a safe space where people believe in me.
The Digital Valley program at Epitech enables instructors to inspire young students to become entrepreneurs, a career path often sidestepped by the traditional educational system.
After high school, most young people struggle to start their own business. They wait for exams and just hope to find a job. However, even if they had a basic knowledge of entrepreneurship, they would be able to stand on their own 2 feet.
I want to create on my own. I would love to become the boss of my own robotics company.
Public speaking is another essential skill for every future entrepreneur, but is still not taught in school. This leadership academy helps pupils find their voices.
The leader is the one capable of conveying emotions.
I know how to speak in public now, how to position myself, and how to talk to people without being afraid.
To boost economic growth, Benin is banking on the digital economy. The government is building a Silicon Valley, roughly 40 kilometers from Cotonou, to prepare for future jobs. Their site will house 3,000 students and researchers.
Well, that's it for Eye in Africa. Thanks for joining us. Do so again. Till then, take care.
"35 years ago, anti-apartheid activist Dulcie September, the representative of Nelson Mandela's African National Congress in France, was murdered in central Paris.
C'était vraiment une personne complètement dévouée à la cause. Moi, je l'avais surnommée l'incorruptible.
Whose toes was she stepping on? Why was the investigation unsuccessful?
We do know from what we understand is that French officials were involved in cleaning up her papers subsequent to her murder.
Who killed the political activist? Was it a state-sponsored crime? A report by Revisited on France 24 and France24.com. France 24, your economy explained. Liberté, égalité, actualité.